We always have the motto, experience matters, and time is money. If you have time to do trials and runs, by all means, but our team's really here to guide you and make sure things are done properly and done properly the first time.
Welcome to Demystifying Microsoft, a podcast by the Sourcepass Center of Excellence for Microsoft. We believe Microsoft shouldn't be hard. Each week, we break down what's changing across the Microsoft ecosystem, help you solve your toughest challenges, and provide clear, actionable advice to keep you ahead of the curve. If you're responsible for Microsoft decisions and want clarity without complexity, you're in the right place. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Demystifying Microsoft podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Taylor, and today I'm joined by Lindsay. How you doing today, Lindsay?
I'm great.
Good deal. Well, I'm excited to talk about this topic. We've talked about this before. It's a real common topic in our space. It's changed a little bit in the last few months, and it was good to refresh the content. So today we're talking about GoDaddy defeds, people moving away from GoDaddy 365 to Microsoft 365. But before we get to that, Lindsay, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? I know you've been on the show before, but it's always good to redo the intros. So
Great to be back on with you, Nathan. My name is Lindsay, and I'm Senior Sales and Business Development Manager here at the Sourcepass Center of Excellence for Microsoft. So been in the Microsoft ecosystem for quite some time and been with the team here at Sourcepass for 5.
awesome. Well, and Lindsay's the smiling face you'll get to interact with if you reach out to us for help with the project as a new customer. So we'd love to have you interact with Lindsay. She's the best. So let's talk about this topic, though. Why GoDaddy defeds, Lindsay? Why are people coming to us with GoDaddy defeds? What's the story here?
So a lot of businesses start with GoDaddy when they're just beginning because it's easy, right? If you're a brand new company, GoDaddy does a great job of getting you off the ground and running. But at some point, easy turns into limiting. So especially when you need true Microsoft 365 admin control, security, licensing flexibility, a cleaner partner relationship, and AI capabilities. We're not knocking on GoDaddy because it is a great tool for some organizations, but we do see a lot of companies just reach a point of growth where they've outgrown GoDaddy and they need to move to a true Microsoft subscription. So during the episode today, we'll dive into why companies move from GoDaddy to Microsoft 365 truly with Microsoft, what the defederation process actually is and what it means. We'll go through the process, the gotchas, and recent changes and updates. And then we'll also discuss why this isn't just a licensing project. It's a modernization and security opportunity for clients.
Absolutely. We do a lot of these days. It's a very common thing. And as you said, a lot of businesses, you're on the startup an LLC thing, and you're trying to figure out an LLC name that you like, that's available. And then you realize that the domain is much harder. And so you're wrestling through different names and domains. And you think you finally settled on a name and a domain. You find that domain and you're searching that GoDaddy page and you click order. And then it says, would you like Microsoft 365? You're like, of course, we need this. We got to have email. I can knock 2 things off my list. And before you know it, you're a couple of years into your business and your email and your domain are all on GoDaddy, your website, but you're running into those limitations. So let's talk about some of those. So the first one is, as you mentioned, they want fuller control. As you're in GoDaddy, they kind of take that admin experience. GoDaddy's actually reselling a full version of Microsoft 365. They just put a layer on in front of it, and that layer actually limits your access to a lot of the admin controls. So if you're trying to accomplish something can be done in Microsoft 365, you're going to find often that GoDaddy environment is definitely less flexible, doesn't give you that full control. You're not running the standard Microsoft capabilities. So that becomes a real challenge. Talk to us about some of the security challenges with being on the GoDaddy 365.
Security controls with a GoDaddy Microsoft account are extremely limited. As you mentioned, you really don't have any control inside the admin portal, and that puts blockers into cleanly implementing policies and controls like conditional access, Defender for Office 365, identity management, app governance, Intune, I mean, you name it. As we're talking Microsoft security, you don't have a lot of that access. Now, GoDaddy will recommend some third-party solutions. Those are things that we can also offer, but we love some of Microsoft's native security tools as well. And it flows seamlessly within a lot of the subscription and license types. So definitely recommend looking into those Microsoft security capabilities. And it's something that you can't do when you're with GoDaddy today.
Yeah. We spent a lot of time talking about this. We've got our hardening guide, our episodes where we talked about our top 10 things to do in a tenant, but it's on Microsoft, our top 10 conditional access policies. These are critical controls for driving your security posture forward. And you just are very limited and can't achieve that same level of security posture. And as you mentioned, a lot of it's also the licensing. GoDaddy has a limited set of licensing. In the Microsoft ecosystem, especially for small business, we now have Business Premium with the bolt-on Defender Suite and Purview Suite, and all these additional add-ons fit a specific need you need. You'll secure access, or you want to go deep into data governance or device management. You have all these capabilities, and in GoDaddy, you have a very limited set of licenses, and so you don't have access to that stack of licenses. And then Copilot. AI is just such a hot topic, and you don't have access to Copilot the same way in GoDaddy. I used it today. I used it a dozen times today. I used Copilot to help me write up the outline for this episode, a response to an email, help me research a topic. I got technical projects, and Copilot's just this powerful tool, and you don't get access to it in GoDaddy. And I think we're going to see a big rise in people who that becomes a motivator to get off of the GoDaddy solution.
Absolutely. And I think, you had mentioned at the beginning, there are some top reasons why clients want to defederate, but I think it's great to take a step back and look at things from a simple perspective. What does defederate mean? So if I'm with GoDaddy, my tenant is federated, and the defederation is the process of removing that, of course. But walk me through what a federated tenant is.
Federated tenant means GoDaddy is not the only thing where we federate with Microsoft 365. Some people federate to Okta. The idea is that it's a layer in front of Microsoft, usually starting with identity. So when you authenticate with GoDaddy 365, you're actually authenticating with GoDaddy and they're passing it to the Microsoft backend. And defederating means we pull away that layer of authentication and account management on the front end and expose you to the full Microsoft instance on the back end. So we pull their layers out of the front. Big advantage of it is GoDaddy isn't running a different tool. It's not a different code base. It's not even a different infrastructure. It's Microsoft's infrastructure. So the huge advantage of it is we're not migrating mail. We don't have to rebuild all the things. It's not a new account or a new identity. It is the same mailbox. It is the same environment. It is just missing a layer of abstraction on top of it that we pull away with the defederation. So it's primarily an identity and admin control pane change and not a full migration. So the advantage of that is it really simplifies the process. It's really not very disruptive. Some people are like, I got to migrate. I got to move my data. And we do a lot of data migrations from other tools, and that is a pain. There's a lot of downsides. We don't have any of those downsides here because the process is relatively simple.
And not easy just from an overall administrative perspective, does it help streamline things? But from an end user perspective, your end users will have no idea that happened. Be prompted to do a password reset once we remove those permissions. The process itself is very quick, very seamless, completed in a quick meeting after a project kickoff call. But there's no disruption, no downtime, and very low impact to your end users, which is extremely important.
What's a big deal? That disruption, that's money, right? When your users are dealing with technology, they're out of the loop. We do like to talk through the process just to give everybody a heads up. It's pretty straightforward. We want to prepare users and really schedule the timing. We still recommend doing it at a low impact time of the month, time of the week. If you're an accounting firm, maybe we don't do it around month end kind of thing. And we want to send instructions to the users so they know and they're prepared to go reset those passwords. We're probably going to have them set up MFA at the same time because friends don't let friends use internet products without MFA. So they're going to have to reset their passwords and get that MFA going. And the next step is after we scheduled it and kind of give some notice to the users, we got to make sure we have our admin access. You'll have to review that. There's different variables there on the back end that we can help you with that are technical. Make sure we have the right admin accounts. And then you run some PowerShell, you run a graph PowerShell command, push a password reset and defederate, and you are off to the races. Final step in the process is we often start putting in new licensing. So buying licenses through GoDaddy, we can defederate and those licenses still will stay in the tenant. So you don't lose access to those tenant licenses. But as we talked about earlier, one of the big benefits is to getting to those more feature rich and often more cost effective Microsoft native licensing. And so that's an opportunity for us to start deploying those. We were a big fan of the business premium SKU. If you're under 300 users, and business premium is where it's at. And so we're often going to push you to move to those licenses. And also we can phase those licenses in, which is helpful as we get to some of our gotchas that come here.
So, like any type of engagement, there are some key areas we want our clients to be aware of in advance. I don't want to pitch this as pain points because they're not, right? These are just things that we want to prepare for in advance. First one, do not cancel your GoDaddy licensing too early. We want to make sure that everything remains as is in GoDaddy. You don't even need to let them know that we are helping facilitate this GoDaddy defederation process in the back end, but we need that licensing intact. So please do not remove any licensing until the project has been completed.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's one of those steps where people want to let GoDaddy know or maybe do right by GoDaddy, but it's actually cleaner or it's just to execute the process. And in that process, those licenses need to be in there. So those mailboxes are licensed. And more importantly, GoDaddy still has their admin control plane involved. If you cancel something, they may delete a mailbox and put you in a spot where you're in trouble. And so that comes to our next piece is one of the things we do in this process is we remove GoDaddy's access to that tenant. They have delegated access. And a new wrinkle that's come up in the last 12 months or so is something called a enterprise app. GoDaddy has a API-based connection into the tenant using an enterprise app. And that's something that we weren't seeing a couple of years ago, but it's become a real hurdle in the last couple of months. The app is called Partner Center Web App. It's very generically named, doesn't have GoDaddy in the name, so a lot of people miss it. But it's a critical step because if you leave that in there, sometimes GoDaddy continues to manage those users. And as licenses expire and changes happen, they can interfere with your tenant. So we remove that delegated access, remove that Partner Center Web App. Once we're sure that their access has been removed, then we can start canceling licenses as they come up for renewal and replacing them with the on-tenant, the Microsoft licensing, and getting ahead of it. So that's an important thing, an important new wrinkle with that Partner Center Web App, that enterprise app. It's a wrinkle that bit us in the butt a few times in the last 18 months, but we got it all figured out now, and it's important to stay ahead of that.
Before we get into licensing, would love to also discuss the Microsoft tenant name. So again, when you have a Microsoft through GoDaddy, you have a Microsoft tenant. And if I was to sign up today, let's say Lindsay's Flower Shop, I would typically do lindsay'sflowershop.onmicrosoft.com. It's my company's unique identifier within Microsoft. When you sign up for an account through GoDaddy, by default, your tenant name is net or a bunch of random numbers .onmicrosoft.com. It's a 50-50 split with our clients. Half our clients say, hey, it's not visible in many places, so let's keep it as is. The other half of our clients say, I need something that reflects my own company name, my brand. Let's get this changed ASAP. So we do have the opportunity to change that tenant name. Like I said, it's not visible in many places, really in the admin portal, and then in SharePoint URL links. So if you have shared any SharePoint links that include the URL, that URL will change. So those links would then be broken. So that's one thing to keep in mind if you are looking to change the tenant name. We can absolutely do so. But if you've shared any SharePoint links, those links won't work, but everything still lives within the library.
It's a great call out. I'm thrilled that Microsoft gave us that ability. We didn't used to have that ability. I had a customer where I fingered their Office 365 tenant. This is like a decade ago, 12 years ago, but it killed me every time I saw it. And back then you couldn't fix it. So they were just stuck with my fat fingered, SharePoint URL and native, URL. So it's awesome that we can now go in and change that. And it is a big win for people who are stuck on the other place we see that a lot is when people's businesses change. You can't change that SharePoint URL often. Microsoft limits how often it can be used, but it can be really valuable when, maybe you have a business that has a couple partner names in the domain and you want to remove one of those partners. They retired. It's great to be able to change it. And these GoDaddy defeds are another great example. So great call out. And wasn't even in the notes, Lindsay. You're on top of it. I love it. Talk to me about licensing, because there are some gotchas in the licensing. And I feel like that's actually maybe gotten more complicated in the last couple of years as well.
It has. So GoDaddy offers a couple of different payment terms, much like Microsoft. You can do an upfront annual order where you're paying for licenses in advance, or they do also offer monthly payments. Now, it is extremely difficult. If you've paid upfront for a full year, the likelihood of getting a refund from GoDaddy is extremely slim. To be frank, we've never seen it and we've tried many times. It does make a lot of sense to look at doing the defederation as close to the renewal dates as possible. We also know that a lot of GoDaddy's renewal dates don't align. So if you've added users at different times, you could have 20 different renewal dates. We have a lot of clients who are just ready to cut ties immediately and don't mind the overlap in payment terms. Again, we don't want you paying more than you need to, but some clients do make the decision to just double pay for a short amount of time so they can truly get away from GoDaddy. But Nathan, you mentioned it earlier, right? If we're keeping the licensing in the GoDaddy portal, you can still use that while it's defederated. So it's not a major issue. There would just be during that time for user management, some management done on the GoDaddy side, some on the Microsoft side. It's not ideal, but again, it's an easy way to avoid double paying.
One common scenario we see is maybe you get 100 users and you've bought licenses in groups of 5. So you got 20, as you said, 20 dates throughout the year. A lot of times, as you said, people will go and say, let's just pick one of those renewal dates and do the migration and get those first 5 users on the Microsoft licensing. We'll cancel the GoDaddy. And then they build a calendar, and then we just together work through going, oh, another one comes up this month. Let's convert them. And we convert them over the course of a year with 20 separate conversions. Now, the nice thing is on the Microsoft side, we can co-term those increases. So every time we cancel a GoDaddy 5, we're not ordering a new set of 5 on the Microsoft side. We're just incrementing up. And by the end of the year, you've got everybody on the same license term and you've really cleaned up your licensing. But as you said, in the past, these were really clean because people were month to month on GoDaddy. So you just say, oh, great, we might have a couple weeks of overlap and we need that, it'll be fine. Now it's definitely a little bit more of take some planning and some evaluating of your licensing scenarios. The other wrinkle that we do run into that I think is worth calling out is there's one feature that GoDaddy tends to sell that a lot of people end up taking advantage of. And we do have to put some work into backporting and replacing, which is GoDaddy sells a lot of licenses that include some email security, specifically the Proofpoint product. So, Lindsay, what are our options if somebody has been using that Proofpoint email filter and they're moving to a defed and they're going to lose access to some of that filtering capability?
We definitely want to make sure our clients have an alternative in place, right? So we would not recommend just getting rid of Proofpoint. We would definitely recommend keeping a third-party email security gateway in the meantime. But Microsoft Defender for Office 365 is a really great solution. Again, native to Microsoft. It's included in a lot of the license types, including Business Premium. And that's Microsoft's anti-spam, anti-phishing, anti-malware. It isn't an out-of-the-box solution. It does require small configuration to enable, but that's something our team is well-versed in at as well. 9 out of 10 times when we do a defederation, we're configuring Microsoft Defender for Office 365 as well. Definitely don't want to remove Proofpoint and assume that Exchange Online protection itself is enough. Proofpoint does go a long way, but we definitely recommend utilizing a Microsoft solution for that additional security level because Microsoft has the shared responsibility model with Microsoft 365. They're protecting the physical infrastructure for which data resides, but it is up to each client to maintain the security of the data itself.
And Defender for 365 is a great tool. We run it all over the place. It really has improved a lot in the last couple of years. They've added some AI detection capabilities. The anti-phishing has improved dramatically. So we're really in our conversation here talking about this post-defederation set of tasks, which Sometimes they're undersold and under talked about. Great, you're defederated. Well, now what? Well, we need to make sure we backfill that email filtering. And we recommend Defender for Office 365 for everybody, regardless of whether you're using Proofpoint. We want to get some of your DNS dialed in, especially around email. So SPF, DKIM, and DMARC are becoming critical for protecting against spoofing and phishing. And so we want to dial that in. And then a very common conversation we're pushing people into is like, hey, great, you're now in Microsoft 365, but guess what? That tenant is mostly default settings. You've inherited a GoDaddy managed tenant that a lot of the settings are default, and we can walk you through a security assessment and show you where there's a lot of room for improvement on those default settings, where we recommend tightening up policies around enterprise apps and deploying proper MFA policies and securing your SharePoint and your Teams, deploying Intune. There's all these capabilities you now have access to. But keep in mind that just because you bought the license does not mean they're properly enabled. And so we always recommend doing a 365 hardening as a pretty quick follow-on to your defederation so that you get that new tenant, or gets the same tenant, but you get that new access, those new licenses, those new capabilities properly configured so that that tenant is as secure as it can be.
And that's the real win, right? Because we started off mentioning the pain points and reasons why clients are looking to defederate. So there's a specific reason why they'd like to move away. So saying that your tenant is now defederated, that is not the finish line. That's the start in the race. So it allows a lot more room for modernization from there.
Completely agree. To wrap this up, the reality is the process is not intimidating. It's not difficult, but sequencing matters. And if you miss a detail, it can be painful for your users. And it's important to just understand the end to end. It's not super disruptive. We do a lot of these and they go really smoothly, but the planning and then the catching all those details really makes a big difference on your long-term success in your full Microsoft 365 tenant. Lindsay, what are some signs that company has outgrown GoDaddy 365? What do you hear on a lot of the calls you get around this?
Most of the time, it's about looking to set up some type of security policies. I'd say the average size of employees is about 10 to 15 users. That's when a company is starting to realize I need to put some more control over not just my email hosting, file storage, but overall IT ecosystem and environment. And Microsoft is a very straightforward place to start with that. Without those controls, a company, very limited security in place. So I'd say average size 10, 15 employees, but we've seen organizations with hundreds of employees still using GoDaddy and they feel like they're behind the ball. Do not feel that way whatsoever, because now is always the perfect time. We're looking forwards, not backwards.
And as we mentioned before, I kind of think it's great to call out again. Defederation is not a migration. It is a removing of a layer of abstraction on the identity and the admin side of things. It's a huge win. I think as we're just wrapping up, it's just important to call that out because it makes the process so much simpler. And it's easy to get confused and say, hey, I need to migrate off of GoDaddy. And you don't actually have to migrate. It's a much simpler process. So that's great news for our users. Lindsay, do you have any closing thoughts for us on this?
I'm always really excited to have these conversations and share more details about the GoDaddy Federation process. We get tons of questions about it. So we're always happy to hop on calls and address those questions. We do see a lot of clients who are interested in trying it themselves. We always have the motto, experience matters and time is money, right? So if you have time to do trials and runs, by all means, but our team's really here to guide you and make sure things are done properly and done properly the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. They are fun projects. You were kind of talking about how we get excited for these. And we do because it's an easy win. The customer's happy. They get a better experience. They get more capabilities. And the projects are smooth. They're structured. We know how to do them. We have all the variables on our plate and we're able to manage them. And they are fun projects to get done. You're like, yeah, it won't take any time for us to get you to a new world and open up all kinds of possibilities. So it's always exciting to get these leads and meet these customers that are ready to experience the full Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So, well, Lindsay, thank you so much for your time today. It was a blast to chat through this and hopefully people find it helpful. And hit us up if you want help with your next GoDaddy defed. We're happy to be there for you. And We hope to see you on our next Demystifying Microsoft podcast. Thanks for your time today. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Demystifying Microsoft, brought to you by the Sourcepass Center of Excellence for Microsoft. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen so you don't miss an episode. If you would like to talk to one of our Microsoft problem solvers, click on the link in the episode description or contact our team at sourcepassmcoe.com. Thank you.